Well, define justice for us here tonight. What do you mean when you're calling people to do justice? What are you calling them to do?
Giving everybody what they deserve.
All right, tease that out a little bit.
Well, see, there's two such radically different aspects to it. First of all, to give people what they deserve means when someone is doing wrong, when someone's doing evil, you should stop them. You should stop them and you should punish them. You should give them what they deserve. And there's a law and order part of justice, which is very, very important. On the other hand, because every human being is in the image of God, Nicholas Wolterstorff, in the last couple of years, wrote a book called Justice, Rights, and Wrongs, which is not an easy book to read. It was written by a top-drawer philosopher to other philosophers. What he would say is that a person in the image of God comes into your presence with certain claims on you. And that is, they have the right not to be killed, not to be beaten, not to be, there's a whole lot of things. Now, I think we all intuitively know because they're in the image of God, we may not treat them in certain ways. And therefore, they deserve to be treated with dignity. They deserve to be treated with a certain amount of kindness. See, that's the opposite in the way of law and order. The law and order side is if they've done wrong, they deserve to be punished. But the other side is, as people in the image of God, they deserve a certain kind of fair treatment, care, and you have to go through the whole Bible to find out what those things are. And that's the reason why the whole Bible really is about living justly. You have to say, what does your neighbor deserve from you? There's a place in Proverbs where it says, do good to your neighbor, because it's actually a very hard text to translate, but the best translations, I think, is do good to your neighbor if they have need, which is their due. Now, you owe it to them to love them. In fact, Paul says so. Paul, of course, says, you owe no one anything except the debt of love. You owe it to people to love them. And so that's the reason why justice in the end becomes a very big, comprehensive thing. Maybe too comprehensive for some people's tastes. Some people have actually said that your definition is too broad, but I think it's what the Bible says. It's what Paul says.
Yeah.
You owe it to people to love them.
I think a lot of people hear justice and they think charity. And you want to distinguish those?
Not too much. On the law and order side, which I think the word mishpat, the Hebrew word mishpat, generally means more righting wrongs, finding people who are doing unjust things, mistreating people, harming people, killing people. You stop them. You put them in jail, whatever. That's law and order, and that's more negative. It's mishpat. Tzedakah, which is another word that means righteousness or justice, has more to do with living in just relationships. And just relationships means living in your community where you're treating people with dignity. Frankly, the best place to see tzedakah is Job 29 and Job 31, where he says, when I see a person who's blind, I do this. When I see a person who's poor, I do this. When I see a person who's a widow and the orphan is what I do. And those things we actually owe people, as far as I can see, in Job 29 and 31. And so, in a sense, charity is not coerced by the government. It's voluntary giving. And yet, from God's point of view, He expects you to be generous with what you have. If you have more than someone else, you should be generous with it. And in that sense, it's justice to be generous. Now, some people say that's just not true. Justice is only punishing evildoers, and charity is not part of justice, but actually, I argue in the book that it is.